Okay, let's start with a quick devotion from Daily Devotions for Writers, and then I've got a few announcements, and we're going to turn the meeting over to our resident poet. Okay. Empty page, blank screen, dread and sometimes panic, a writing rite of passage that never ends. Sometimes I'm able to set aside self absorption to rejoice in the notion of community. Maybe rejoice is too strong a word. Let's say I'm comforted by knowing other writers are feeling nauseated at the exact same moments for the exact same reasons. Frankly, I'm suspicious of anyone claiming to love writing all the time. I love it, too, except when I don't, and I do not love writing when I'm staring into the abyss of getting started. I don't love it when projects shape shift. I definitely don't like it after I've finished whatever I once dreaded beginning. My precious rituals for getting past panic have changed over the years. I used to reread my published work. I used to reread a folder of kudos. I used to lay supine on the floor until all three cats purred me into calm. Then I added prayers to the mix. These too have changed over the years. Prayers of supplication have given way to prayers of gratitude. Worrying about what to write is, after all, such a high class problem. Not that I've stopped whimpering. At least the cats answer when I call. So does God, eventually. As a writer, we just really need to be patient. So, just a quick prayer. Father, I thank you for gathering us together today. You have created us to be creative, and I pray that you will come to our assistance and give us direction in what we should write and when we should publish. In Jesus' name, I pray. Okay, I've got a few. I don't see these people, so I'll set those aside. Oops. Um, we had a wonderful conversation about writing at last month's small group session. In fact, we had quite a few, more than expected, show up, 15 for a table that was set up for 8. We are no longer using the Dropbox to exchange writing. If you want to submit writing, email it to me, and I will schedule it and email it to those participating in the small groups where we discuss writing and critiquing. We currently have 7 submissions scheduled for the August meeting. I have already mailed those submissions to people who participate in the group. If you have not received them, please let me know, and I will make sure that you get them before we meet for the critique session next month. Now, you do not have to submit writing to attend the meetings. A lot can be learned listening to people talk about writing. If you have not submitted writing but would like to review the submissions before the August meeting, send me an email and I'll send them to you. And that way you can review them and be more on the same page we are in what we're discussing. You can send them to scwg@cox.net and I will distribute them. And if you don't, I've got cards up here with that email on it if you don't have the email. Now, this is a member benefit. This is only available to those who have become members and paid the dues. If you're not comfortable having your writing discussed in an open forum, you can email it to me and I will critique it privately and send it back to you. But that's for members only. Now, would you pass these out? Next Saturday, July 28th, the St. Charles Parish East Regional Library is celebrating local authors, and 3 of our members are participating. Myself and Ingrid and Jerry Lepre, who told me about it. Appreciate that. Now, I've already talked to the library. She knows I will be doing more than selling books. I will also be promoting Southern Christian writers. And she will let me seat more people at the table. I can fit 2 more people at my table. If you have a book and you would like to sell your book, send me an email. Best way to communicate with me is email. 90% of the time I get back to you within 24 hours. Send me an email that you would like to sit at the table. It's for 3 hours. It's in the St. Charles Parish Library. And you can sit there and sell your book and keep all of the profits. But this is also a member benefit. That's only available to those who have become members and paid the dues. We need to keep those who are helping us financially strong because they're the ones that keep us going. So But anybody can participate. There are just some things that are reserved for the members. Let's see. Okay, membership. Attending these meetings are free and everyone is welcome to participate, but there are benefits. I've already named 2 to becoming members. You can become a member at any meeting. Just ask for an application. The dues are $50 annually, but we prorate the dues, so you're only paying for the remaining months of the year. If you join today, the dues are $20. Next month's dues will be $15. Renewal is every January, and payment can be made cash, check, or credit card. You can pay in installments if you need to. Now, when I started these meetings last September, the first person that walked in the door was a poet who wanted information on how to publish his poetry. That was the very first person that walked in the door. And in most, maybe all of the meetings since that time, I have encountered people who write poetry. So we're starting a small group for poets. The first small group meeting will be in August, held simultaneous with the fiction nonfiction group that I will lead, that I am currently leading. There is an area in the children's section where we're going to put a table, and we will have the poets meet there and we will meet here. If it's too crowded in that section, Christian Fellowship Church has already said they will allow us to use their facilities. So if you need to meet someplace else because you just don't have enough elbow room, then I'll discuss that with Linda and we'll see what we can work out. Both of the groups fall under the umbrella of Southern Christian Writers. If you write poetry, fiction, and or nonfiction, you do not have to choose a group. Whatever you want to work on that month, attend that group. If you want to work on your poetry, attend the Poets group. If you want to work on your fiction, nonfiction, attend my group. Now today, Ingrid Adams, who is the author of 12 books of poetry, she's got them all lined up here, and she is a Southern Christian Writers Board member at large, is kicking off the Poets Fellowship today by sharing her experience in writing and publishing poetry, and she will also be the leader of the Poets Fellowship. So let's welcome Ingrid.
Where's this on? Okay, let's see what that is. Got them? Okay. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. All right. First of all, I want to thank the Guild for having me speak to the group because it is indeed an honor and a privilege whenever you're asked to speak. So I don't take that lightly. I thank the Guild. I thank Tina and Linda and Rod for having me here today speaking. And I want to thank everybody who has come out today because you could have been any other place, but you're here today to share or to learn more about writing. So I do thank you for coming out today. As Tina said, I'm going to talk today to you about writing and publishing poetry. So what we're going to do now is, can you pass these out for me? Now, this isn't to scare you. It looks like a big packet, but I talk a lot, and we're going to go through it fairly quickly, and promise I won't bore you. Okay, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself while these packets are going out. Most of you have seen me here in the meetings before. Tina and I were both members of the North Shore group, the Southern Christian Writers Guild in Mandeville, and we traveled on the North Shore for many years. And thank God that we have a group over here now on our South Shore, so our commute is shorter. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to share with you what I do in my writing. And at the end, please feel free to ask questions. I will try to answer them with my knowledge of poetry. And if there's something I can't answer, I will get an answer for you. Okay? All right. So without further ado, we're going to start looking at this thick handout.
Make sure when they ask the questions on the microphone.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we'll begin with this handout here. All right. First of all, whenever I do a talk or whenever I speak to a group, I like to define what I'm going to be speaking about. Today I'm going to be speaking about writing poetry. So let's start off with what is poetry. Our paper said Webster's Dictionary defines poetry as writing that formulates concentrated imaginative awareness of experience and language, chosen and arranged to create a specific emotional response through meaning, sound, and rhythm. Okay? As a poet, Frost says a poem begins with, this is more like what I would say or defined it, a lump in your throat, a homesickness, or a love sickness that is reaching out towards an expression, an effort to find fulfillment. A complete poem is one, think about this, where the emotion has found thought and the thought has found the words. Okay? That kind of hits a little closer to home there for all of us who write. Because for me, poetry is expressing your emotions. Now we're going to talk a little bit about steps in writing poetry. All poetry begins with the initiation of an exciting idea. It's what sends you racing to your computer or to your notebook. Okay, this is how I write. Let me tell you about how I started writing in the first place. I've been seriously writing since I was 13 years old. But of course, I was so inspired, I just knew this book I was writing was going to be the next bestseller on New York's bestseller list. So I sent this book into Dell Publishing Company and just knew that they were going to want to publish this, right? So I got this letter saying, thank you for your recent inquiry, but we're not interested in a Civil War love story at this time. Okay, at 13 years old, that's just heartbreaking. It's like, what do you mean? They don't want my book? Not my book. It's the best. So what do? You grow up and you do all the teenage things and you stay in contests and I joined speech and debate and, I was a speaker and all these wonderful things. You grow up and life goes on. And then I work professionally, have a wonderful employment, a career with the Department of Homeland Security, retire as an intelligence analyst, all of that good stuff. I get an early retirement though. So then here I am. What am I going to do? So I wake up the next day, I have no job to go to. Well, I said, this is it. This is my time to write. That's what I'm going to do. I've been wanting to do this all of my life. So I sit there and I'm trying to write. And then there's writer's block. I cannot write a thing. If you've spoken to me a couple of times here, I have a motor mouth. I talk. Or if you know me personally, I speak and I talk all the time. I'm never at a loss for words. So why now am I at a loss for words, Lord? I can't think of anything. I can't write. And then I heard the Lord telling me, give me 7 books of poetry. And then I'll let you write all the novels you want to. So it's like, poetry? Really? Poetry. I'd written it, I knew how to do it, but it wasn't the first thing that came to my mind. I really wanted to just write a novel to let other women know how I'd overcome some obstacles in my life, a book about empowering women so that other women can be encouraged and do the same and be successful. So I said, okay, Lord, y'all know it's better to follow obedience. It's better than to not listen to the Lord. It's better to obey. So I would start to write, and then it would just come to me, whatever he wanted me to write. I could add to it. No. I couldn't take away from it either. That was just it. Whatever he gave me is what I needed to write. And I found myself starting to pull over on the highway, jot down things or whatever. So that's how I started writing poetry, and I began to love it. So let's talk about my steps in writing poetry. Now, some of you, whoever are poets right now, or you're writing poetry, your style may be a little different. Your thoughts may definitely be different, but these are the basic ideas or fundamentals that I think you need to start writing poetry. Some of you who are not writing poetry, just writing fiction now, who may want to become interested in it, hopefully these are some tips that can help you. The first thing I think about is to develop your idea. What is your poem going to be about? You have to have some reason, some thought, something to write about, to talk about. If you don't have any ideas already, it's not as hard as you think. In a poem, you can get right to the heart of feeling or the moment just like that. You don't have to spend a lot of time introducing characters or setting the scene. It's a little different than stories or novels where you paint a whole picture and you talk about the town and you do all this background material and you develop characters in that. With poetry, you can kind of just get to your emotional thought or, your feeling or whatever your point you're trying to get across to everyone. Okay. Always be positive. At the time, we may be experiencing anger, grief, or jealousy. We don't only have to write a poem when we feel high or low. All of us have memories, right? What about trying to recreate those memories in a poem? How about recording your inner thoughts? You may compose a poem by painting a picture of thoughts through words. So, what I'm saying here is whatever you have in your mind, whatever your idea is, whatever you're going through, there's always something you can write about. People come up to me all the time and say, I don't have anything to write about. But as long as you have thoughts, as long as you wake up and you see the sky, as long as they're words, you can always communicate that through poetry or through your writing. Okay? All right. Number 2 is planning. Now that you have an idea, you can begin to concentrate on your scope or plan. Try to complement the depth of your poem to your time and interest to meet your emotion or passion for your topic. Have you considered your reader or your audience? Are you using local terms specific to a certain group of individuals or community? Okay. In my second book, which is As I Ponder, this is, well, you can see most of my books, they look like a novel. This is all poetry. Most of my books will have a common theme, and all the poems will be related to that central theme. Okay? In this book, the reason why I'm mentioning it now is because I'm talking about, do you know your audience or your reader? There are a couple poems in here that are written in slave dialect. And so in doing this book and writing this book, a lot of times during Black History Month, people will ask me to come and perform these particular poems because that's a particular group of folks that are interested in that type of writing, especially during that time. So if you need some information, or if you're writing about a particular part of the country, like we do sometimes, stories about being in New Orleans, living in New Orleans, the terms that we use, how's your mom and them, making groceries, different things like that, then you know who you're writing to, so you can know how to express yourselves. Okay? All right. What is the intent of your poem? Is it to teach a lesson? Is it to share an important experience? Or is it to thank someone for helping you with a particular crisis? There are various reasons why we write poetry, and that's what I'm saying there. So when you start out and you have your idea and then you have your plan, you have a foundation, you have a basic foundation, you know where you're going with your poetry. Something that have happened in your life and you feel like somebody was really there for you. You may just want to dedicate a poem or write something about how you felt or how they made you how they helped you get through, how you got your breakthrough. Okay, number 3 is researching. Does your poem include any historical times or dates? You may need to check out particular facts, statistics, historical references, or different character traits to solidify the authenticity of your poem, which is pretty much like what I just said with the time in this book, from what I just went over about the colloquialism of New Orleans, particular area that you're going to be writing about or speaking about. Also in this book, there is a poem about the slave revolt of 1811, as told from the slaves at the Destrehan plantation. And within that poem, I had to do a little research. I took 9 months where I led a group, and I was at the slave cabin there. I talked about the life of a slave, and I had to learn the history of the plantation there and what happened during that time. So there's a poem in here that tells you about the history of what happened with the slave revolt of 1811, and it's entitled, Where You Be, Brother George, Where You Be? And it's in slave dialect too, because of the research and the time that I had to spend to get you, what you want to do is get your reader to feel like they are right there back in that time, experiencing what may have been happening at that particular time. So that's where your researching comes in. Number 4 is organizing. Now that you have the basic information, you may begin to organize your thoughts into writing, okay? Because we've decided what our idea is. We've decided how we're going to plan it out, what we're going to do, what's the scope of what we're going to write on. We've decided if we needed to do any research to look up anything so we can have our factual information in order. Now we're going to organize all of this and we're going to begin to write. Okay? Number 5 is writing your poem. It's time to get those thoughts finalized on paper or on your computer. If you're like me, and I call myself a dinosaur because, I write out everything because the thoughts are coming and they are flowing, and that's the way I write, which is perfectly fine. You use whatever medium or method works well for you. Other people, more modern people who are into what everybody's doing now, have their laptops out, and as they're thinking, they are typing and they're just going to town. But I'm the little turtle that's still trudging along. But it's not the one who finishes first. It's the one that perseveres and you finish to the end. So I encourage you to figure out what methods work best for you and proceed in that area. Okay? That's what I'm just saying now. Some poets choose to formulate their ideas and do their planning, researching, and organizing, all while sitting at their computers, therefore commencing to jump right into typing up their work. Okay? So if you are a person who's on the laptop, you can edit and you can, correct things as you're going along. Whereas my thoughts are flowing and afterwards I have to read it back. And sometimes some words, I have to go back and, correct them. So it may take a little longer, but it's what works well for you. What's going to work best for you. And that's fine. It's really okay. You do what works best for you. And then I tell you, in my case, my writing, I just write it down in a notebook. I initially start my planning and I use an outline. That's what works for me. A lot of times when you're writing a short story or a novel, you'll use an outline, but I use an outline with poetry too. Like for this book, let's take this book for an example. It's As I Ponder. And this book is a book of 52 poems, I believe. And it's broken down into 3 parts. So I have a contents page in all of my books that I do. So each part will talk about a different theme of the book. The whole book's theme is about thought processes, my thought processes. And they're broken down into 3 different categories. The first one is thoughts of myself. So that whole section will have poems that will entail my own thoughts. The second part will have thoughts of those gone before me, people who have lived and have now passed on, and they've left some ideas and some virtues that I thought was worth writing about, noteworthy. And part 3 are thoughts of family and friends. So that's how my outline would be. And that part is just on poems of people who are still alive with us that I thought was noteworthy. They're still with us today. So that's how I organize my poetry. Other people may do theirs differently, and some people may not feel like they really need to have sections, and they may not feel like they need to lump it all with one thought or one section. It depends on what works best for you. All right. So after I get my outline together, I continue on to do necessary research, and then I write. Lastly, I type up my poetry. That's what I do. So I'm very old-fashioned about it. Most of my poetry is Microsoft Word documents after I've done all this writing and I've done all this transposing. Okay? Number 6 is to proofread your work. After you've written it, well, the first thing you're going to do is you're gonna read it. You're going to see what you wrote. You read it. So then we know as writers, our work is subject to errors. So our next step is to reread and proofread our work. Ask yourself these questions. Do I explain my main idea clearly to others? Can others feel the thoughts or emotions expressed in this poem? Did my poem flow with ease? Did I confuse my reader or myself? Is there something I need to change? Okay, when I write a poem, I will read it and I'll ask myself these basic questions. If I can't follow my poem, chances are no one else will be able to follow it either. So I need to do something here. Where was my mind? What was I thinking? Sometimes I will start off with a poem going in one direction and it'll change, and I'll actually like it from that perspective better. So, it all depends on what you're writing, and, you feel your way through. That's what I feel is so good about poetry. It's an emotional kind of thing. It's an expression of what you're feeling at the time. Okay? And if you cannot understand what you are saying, you're probably not expressing what you're trying to get across. Because if you can't understand it, how will anybody else be able to understand it? That's the way I look at it. Okay? All right. I have listed for you some reference materials. You can check these out on www.amazon.com if you want more information about the art of poetry, how to write. The first book is The Art of Poetry Writing, and it's a guide for poets, students, and readers. It'll just give you some basic information on the craft of poetry. The second one is The Making of a Poem. So it'll talk a little bit more about the types of poetry. And since I wasn't quite sure how many people here are definitely just poets or people who want to just write poetry, I've listed this book in case there's someone who really wants to know more about poetry and doesn't know what type of poem they want to write or even know the different types of poetry. So that's some reference information you can look up there to find out if you'd like to take a shot at writing any poetry or finding out more information about poetry. And last but not least is A Poetry Handbook by Mary Oliver, which discusses how a poem is built. And it'll show you how you need to structure your poem, write your poem, give you some more basic foundation for poetry. Okay? Now, as I said, writing poetry, there are different styles of poetry. There's different ways to write it, but that's basically how I write poetry, and that's how I've developed all of these books. We're going to talk now about publishing poetry. And I think that was one of the big questions when most people walk through the door. They're like, I've been writing some poetry and people talk to me about it and say it's good, but they say you ought to get this published so other people can read it. So what do I do? How do I do that? Well, that's an important question. Now, with the way the technological world is, there are many different choices. There are other options. There used to just be the traditional option, which we all went through as writers to get anything published. But today we do have options. So moving right along, discussing publishing poetry, I have found that there are 4 general options to publishing poetry. So let's go through each one of these and we'll discuss a little bit about the pros and cons of each one of these. The first one I found was web publishing. Okay? Web publishing simply sets up web pages to display your work. This is an easy process if you have some knowledge of web page creation. Okay? If you are computer savvy and you can find your way with ease through using the internet on the web, this may be the way you want to get started. And I have a reference for you. Check out www.blogger.com to create your own site. Okay, you can simply paste in your poems. This is similar to emailing. Okay, so you don't have to worry about like a big setup, or it's not a big financial obligation. It's an inexpensive way to get started. So that's what I've listed as a pro here. Websites are inexpensive. They're easy to create and easier to promote because they are free. Okay, this one is free. Now, it's just like anything else. If there's something that's positive about it, there's usually something that may not be to your liking. That may be a con or a negative thing about it. Now, for web publishing, I find out because they are inexpensive and easy to create, many people are doing this. So it may carry less prestige than other methods. So, it depends on what you're trying to get. What is your whole idea for writing poetry? Is it that you just want to write it because you like to write poetry? It's your hobby. You're passionate about it. Is it that you're trying to get it out to the masses so people can see what you write, people can become interested in it? You want to develop this for more than just a hobby. You want it to be a part-time job. You want it to be your full-time line of work that you do. So, you need to decide why are you writing and for what purposes and for who your audience is going to be. So web publishing may not be the thing you want if you're really trying to get really well known really, really quickly, because a lot of people have web pages out and a lot of people are doing things on the internet. So that's one thing to consider. Subsidizing poetry, subsidizing publishing, is your second option for publishing poetry. Subsidizing is a process where you pay someone to publish a book for you. This option can be known also as print-on-demand service. Okay, and I have 2 sites you can check out here if you're interested in this. So basically, they go from like the simplest, they're kind of going in a little format here, where it's the easiest, and then it gets a little more difficult, a little more detailed as we go on with your options. So you can check out www.lulu.com or createspace.com. Now, I've tried to use CreateSpace. That was one of the subsidized publishings that I tried to use. But for me, since I'm a creature of habit, a dinosaur, it doesn't work that well for me, because I find I was not going to be saving much money. Because if you know how to format and you can do all of those, the technical details about publishing, then this will work well for you, because you can do all of that. And then all you do is you send it to them, and then what they do, they just print it up for you. Okay? But if you want to use their services, they do provide the formatting, and they provide the justifications, and they provide the binding and all of that for you. But all that comes at a price. So we're going to talk about that later with what I end up doing with my books or whatever. So I found that I really wasn't going to be saving any monies. And also in doing your cover, I find that this is what sells books. It's your titles and your covers, your pictures that people buy. Not necessarily my picture, but like some of the other books. People look at books and they may buy it just because they like your title. You know, it intrigues them. They're interested in that. Or they like the picture, you know. And the third thing I think that sells is what you write on the back of the book, you know, to just give them a little bit, to tell them a little bit about the book. And they're like, I'm interested. I think I want to find out more about that. You know, next thing you know, your book becomes what we call a page turner, and they love it, and they tell somebody else about it. You know, your poetry is that great. You know, so and so, I read his or her book, and their poems are really good. You know, so those are the things that really sell books. The problem with subsidized publishing is that they don't do your cover for you for free. They charge for everything. So that's something else. If you were to do your cover, you would have to illustrate it yourself, or you'd have to draw it. Now, I'm not an artist. You know, that's not one of my liberal art fortes. So you'd have to have someone, you know, design it for you or whatever. So that's some other built-in cost that you'd have to pay. Okay? So these are some things that you have to consider doing subsidized poetry. Okay? So the pros on subsidized publishing is the print-on-demand publishers only print books when they are ordered. Okay, so, you know, you contact them and you say, okay, I need 50 books. That's what they're going to print up, and, you know, you're going to get a cost at maybe it's $3 a book. Okay, that's all you're going to pay. Okay, provided that you have provided them with everything they need. You've done the justification, you've gotten all of that other work done. You've got the cover in and that. If not, you got to add all those other costs in. Okay, so that's the pros on that. You don't have to pay for a set run of books, and sometimes there's no upfront fees. So it depends on what company or whatever. You know, you have to always check with whatever company or whatever website you're looking at to see what all the little details. Make sure you read all the little fine print about everything before you sign up with anybody about any of these companies you deal with. The cons for subsidized publishing is you have very little control over how your book looks, okay? Unless you have come up with the whole idea and you've done it yourself, you actually put it in the hands of someone who is going to charge you to do it the way that you want it done. It may not be exactly how you want it, but it's subsidized publishing. So what they're really looking at and how they make their money is on the printing of the book. That's what they're really looking at. You know, you want 5 books, we just mass produce them for you. Okay. All right. Now, there is a more expensive route with the subsidized publisher that will work for you to tailor your book to your vision. The publisher will then print a run of 100, okay, as a bare minimum, and 1,000 will get you a reasonable price per book cost, because basically that's how most things go. The quantity of things give you a cheaper price, not just in printing, just in buying other items. You've probably experienced that in buying some things yourself on another basis in another arena. So the more books that you want to have printed, the cheaper your cost would be. So that's something else to think about too. But now, what you have to think about is, when you have all these books, what are you going to do with all of these books? Okay, they're not going to provide any of this marketing or any of this stuff for you, you know, and that's where wonderful groups like this group comes in, the Southern Christian Writers Guild, and other groups, other information you can find out from friends or other writers doing your networking that can help you to network and sell books and promote your books, because it's a very overwhelming feeling when you say, gosh, I have these books and I got printed and I'm published now, and I have 1,000 books and I only had to pay $2 for each one, and you can't sell any of them, you know. So that can be a very overwhelming thought. Okay, moving on to self-publishing, okay, which there are 2 forms, in my opinion, of self-publishing. The first is a challenge. It means taking charge of every aspect of the publishing process from the start to the finish. You not only write the book, you edit the book, you format it, you advertise it, you order it, you inventory it, you sell and provide the delivery of the finished product. Okay, so you work it from start to finish, from your very first, like I said, when planning to write poetry, from your very first idea of it. How are you going to plan it? How are you going to, if you got to do any research, how are you going to set it up, to the getting it written up, getting it typed up, getting it formatted, getting everything in order, getting it bound up, getting it to be a book. And since this is technically your own business, this is owning your own business, this form of self-publishing. You are the owner from start to finish. There's no one else that's going to take any responsibility for any of it, because you have to go out and you have to buy all of the equipment and everything you need. Okay, that's the first thing, the thing I have listed as a pro there. You control the entire publishing process from start to finish. If you had to go out and you had to get the printing press, you had to find out the materials you needed to do justification, you had to find out what you need to do to market it, to sell it, whatever. You take full responsibility and you enjoy and you reap all the full benefits of it too, though. All profits earned belong to you. Now, the cons for this type of self-publishing: you are responsible for providing all equipment to complete the entire publishing process, which can be quite costly. Okay, so you need to look at that. How much are you willing to invest in this? Is this something that you want to do? Is this going to be your job? Is this going to be your career? If it is, and if you can afford it, I don't know how much the press and all that would cost. Okay, because I never wanted to go into it, that I never want to make that much of a financial responsibility for it. I like the writing part. I liked having the ideas and getting it out so people can hear, especially what the Lord has given to me to give to his people. Okay, but if you want to own it from start to finish, that's what you'd have to do. You have to inquire and find out how much all of this machinery and equipment's going to be, and you're going to have a place to house all this. You're going to have thought all of that out from start to finish. And if that's what you want to do, it's great, and that's what you can do. I'm quite sure it's very time consuming, but I'm quite sure it'll be worthwhile. It's a worthwhile investment if that's what you're going to do, if that's the way you're going to go about publishing your work, publishing your poetry. Okay? Now, the form of self-publishing that I do is what I'm going to talk about now. It's the second form of self-publishing, and it's quite similar to subsidized publishing in that you submit your work to a publisher, but you choose a publishing package which best suits your needs. Okay, I have a publisher that I use, and it's the last page. I don't have it in my packet, but I do. It's here. It's the last page. Should be the last page in your packet. The publisher I use is Ex Libris. Okay, and I printed this up for you, which they allow me to do this, to give you some information, some basic information, if you choose to use a self-publishing company of this nature. How I got to use this company is because a smaller writing group I was in, they knew I was a poet and I published poetry, and they wanted to get me published within a year. So she gave me 3 choices, which none of them was Ex Libris. But once you get online and you look at these other people's prices, you've looked online and you've ordered things sometimes, and they'll say other people also like this or chose this. And Ex Libris' name was one of the companies that came up. So I said, well, let me query this one and check it out. I didn't like the other 3, not that they were bad companies, but because they were out of my price range, to be honest with you. Because what I was looking to do is, everybody had told me, you write a lot and you have a lot to say. You need to get some of this published. So I was like, okay, how am I going to do all of this? All of this is expensive, and it's very overwhelming. So I said, let me check and see. It's just like when you're going to build a house or something. You take 3 bids or whatever, and you check out you do your research on all 3 of the companies, or every company that provides a bid, and then you choose the best one, or the one that's going to suit your needs. Okay, so that's what I did. Ex Libris was the winner here. So this is the process that you go through. First, they have the submission. Now, I'll tell you about my experience with this company. I called them, and I got, who you get on the phone is your submissions rep, and you explain to them what you're trying to do. I said, hello, I have this poetry here, and I really like it. I want to produce a book of poetry. And so they said, okay, we have these packages, and you can look on their website, exlibris.com, and they have different packages. Now, when I started off, the basic package was just $600. The basic package now for publishing poetry is $8.99. Okay, but throughout the years, since, as you see, I have 12 books published with them, 3 times I got kind of like a buy one, get one kind of deal, where 2 times they published 2 of my books for like the price of one, like one for $1 kind of thing. And it's like $5.99 and $1 kind of thing. And with them and with other companies that are of this nature, they do installment payments too. So it depends. Ex Libris does 3 payments. So it's kind of like you're putting something on a layaway plan, and you can pay it off in 3 payments, because they try to meet your needs. They try to get your business is what they're doing. They realize that this is a chunk of money, and most people don't have this huge chunk of money to just dish out at one time. So they try to work with you so that your dream can become a reality. And so you get this person on the phone, and they're your submissions rep, and they're going to help you get organized and figure out which package is best for you. Now, it depends on what you're trying to get in your package, because each package, as the price goes up, it gives you more. You'll get more in your package, more services, or more products. In the basic package, you will get, they will do everything for you, the things that I don't want to do. They will print up your book. They will send you online what's called galleys, which is the production, which you can see is step 2 here. And a galley is the proof of your work in book format. And they will send that to you, just like an email. They'll send it to you, and they'll let you look at it, online. You can see how it's set up, and you can see if you approve it. You can tell them, I don't like this. You can make some changes or whatever. These are the things that I'm not familiar with, nor do I really want to become familiar with how to do this. That's why I'm paying them to do this. Okay? So this is what works well for me and what I like to do. And they will walk you through each step. First step is the submission. And they'll let you know when you get your information to them. They'll let you know, now, Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so will be your production or your author services rep. They'll let you know when it's walking through the next step They'll let you know everything you need to know. As far as payment, they will direct you to the finance department, and finance will handle that for you. With Ex Libris, they will give you one set of corrections, which will be included in your cost. Okay, you've edited your book, you've proofread it yourself before you sent it to them. Nowadays, most people are sending everything through the internet, like an email to them. But you can also, if you want to, print it up and you can mail it in to them if you want to, or you can put it on a disc and you can mail a disc to them. Whatever format works best for you, you can do that. But once they have it, they will review it, and they have a staff that edits it and will edit it, and that'll be your one time for corrections. Okay, now you can get it corrected 2 or 3 times, but it adds on to your cost. So they tell you to take your time and look it over the first time after they have edited and reviewed it. And if you catch something that's that's misspelled, or they didn't do it right, or whatever, that's your time to tell them so that they can correct it then. After that, if it's a second or third time, then the cost will be billed on to you. In your packet, if you take a basic package, like most companies, you get some other items they include as part of your publishing package. With this Libris, you will get 50 business cards. You'll get 50 postcards that you can send out to friends, neighbors. You can drop over at the bookstore here. Hey, I have a book. Come on out if you're going to do a book signing someplace. This is part of what you can use for your marketing or whatever. Okay, they'll give you 5 posters. So this will be marketing information that comes along with your price. Okay? And step 3 is the post-publication, and that's when you're done. Okay, now they're not going to start printing it up until you've paid. Like if you paid on installments, they won't start printing it up until you've paid your last installment. Let's say you broke it down in 3 payments and it's $140, 3 times. If it's like July 20th, then August 20th, $140 more is due, like that, just like a normal bill you'd have to a creditor. Now, they may give you an incentive when you pay that second one, or you're about to pay that second installment payment. They may tell you, if you finish and pay your balance, we will give you an additional 10 books free or something. They'll give you some kind of incentive. That may happen. With the package, you're going to get an author's book that's free, and they're going to give you 5 books. That's going to be included in your cost. So again, it depends on how much you are willing to invest in publishing a book. You may say, that's still a bit too expensive for me. It just depends on, what you're looking at. And if you want more books, then, the packages are different, and they're designed really to suit you. Now, if you're interested in them doing your marketing, then they have a department that does that. They will send things out and put it on the World Wide Web and do a lot of other publishing aspects for you. You can get a web page with them just for your book. There are all kinds of other options you can get. Some of them come with a cost. Some of them are just there for the 30 days or whatever it takes for you to publish your book. You'll have the advertising that goes along with the price. So it's all what you can build on, as you go on with them. And I found that I've had some little difficulties, as you will have with any company, but anything I have asked them to do, they have corrected it in a timely fashion, and I haven't had a problem. So that's why I've stayed with them for so long, because, you can look online, and there are a lot of people who say a lot of things about some of these self-publishing companies. They take a lot of your money. They're very expensive. They don't do exactly what they say they're going to do. They don't get back to your return calls, or they just don't put out the type of product that they seem to be advertising and that you thought you were going to get. So you do have to beware of the companies that you're going to be dealing with. So far, I've dealt with this one, and I haven't had any problems with it. Like I say, it meets my needs for what I'm trying to do. Okay, All right. But like anything, I do have some pros and some cons for that. The pros, your publishing package will include your book cover design. That's one thing I have had that has been a good thing with the company I've wanted to deal with. I just tell them what I want. This is what I see. I get a vision of my cover. I tell them, and then they create something, and then they send it to me just like they send your galleys for you to proof. And they say, okay, what do you think about this? And they can change. You can say, I like it. You don't like it, they'll change it. It's included in your price. The cover's included in their cost. Book 8. The thought I had for this, they didn't have anything from their think tank. They had to actually draw and create this one for me. Okay, so it's been working out well.
They do the cover?
They do the cover. They do the cover. The cover is included in the cost, depending on it's included in any of the packages whichever package you choose, your cover will be included. Okay? All right, so that's the pros. You order your books through the publisher at an author's discount to sell to the public. Okay? And let's say your book is going to retail for $19.99. With a self-publishing company of this nature, that's what I would call a con, because they have their own set prices on what they're going to charge for the books, because your books can be ordered through their website. But now their prices are set based on your amount of pages. Okay, so I think it's 107, up to like 107 pages, your book will cost $15.99. 108 to like 399 pages is going to cost $19.99. Now, for poetry or for anything that's paperback, that's a little pricey. That is a little pricey, but that's the nature of their business, So that's the prices that they set. Now, you can sell it for less if you want to, but that's the prices that they set, and that's what it's going to be retailed through them. And then their books are online with Amazon.com and with BarnesandNoble.com. So that's the prices that they're going to set with that. So you may want to stay in keeping with that. So I find that as a con, because you're going to be competing with other books in the same category as your book, and they're probably going to be priced a little bit cheaper. So that's going to be maybe a little bit of a challenge for you. Okay. When you order your books, you order them through them, and let's say the book is retailing for $19.99, your author's price may be $9.99 or maybe $12.99. Okay, so you order your books through them, and that's the profit. That's the monies that you're going to make when you sell your book at $19.99, or when you're buying it in bulk, 25 books, 50 books, and they'll ship them to you. Sometimes they have specials. They may say, if you buy 100 books, you're going to buy them at an author's discount of 70%. So you may pay $7.99, $8 for a book. If you buy 1,000 books, you may end up paying $6.99 for each book. So again, it's the quantity thing, which works pretty much in business and in commerce. The larger amount, the less the price is. Okay, so if anybody has any questions about how that entails, I can talk to you later on in detail about that. Okay, we're going to move on a little bit. All right, so that's the biggest con or thing or argument I would say that is against self-publishing, is that the price set is really your biggie there. All right, when books are purchased through their website, you receive a meager portion of the retail cost too. Okay, so.
Did I miss anything important? I was late.
I don't think so.
It's
It's in there. It's all in there. I've been talking basically from your handout. Okay. Yeah, it's audio recorded, and it's going to be on the website too. So later on, you can catch on to the part you missed at your leisure. Okay. All right. The other con is that when books are purchased through their website, you receive a meager portion of the retail cost. meaning that, okay, you buy my books through exlibris.com, I'm going to be the third person to get paid. Okay, so a $20 book may yield me $5. So that's a con. You know, that's something you want to think about too. You know, but then, like I said, you have to think about the your different options. You know, what you're willing to invest and why you're publishing. What are you doing it for? And figure out what works best for you. The last option that I'd like to talk about today is traditional publishing. Okay, which is I think harder and more difficult with poetry. Okay, traditional publishing is when the publisher assumes all of the expenses and sometimes pays the poet. Many publishers do not publish books of poetry except if they can see a clear profit, especially major publishers, or if they can appease an otherwise profitable writer. Okay, rest her soul, like a Maya Angelou or someone who has been an educator or someone who has been in the limelight or is a celebrity. If they can appease this person to publish their book through Random House or Simon Schuster or one of these big companies, they will, because they know that their name will sell the book, whatever it is of poetry. Okay.
You might not believe I took some melatonin this morning at 4. And it's kicking in.
Okay,
So
if you, that's fine.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's
again. I should've
okay.
stayed home.
That's okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Now, the pros for this is that you won't have to assume all the expenses for publishing, and you will be paid by the publisher. Now, you know, that's always a plus there, regardless of if you're writing fiction, nonfiction, if you're doing any writing. If someone's going to pay you and they're going to assume the majority of the responsibilities or all of them, then that's usually you know, you think, hey, this is a win-win situation. Okay. Now, how do you figure out who those people are? It's very hard when you're publishing poetry, because most of the literary agents or the people that you would try to present your work to, they're going to say what they're interested in and what they're not going to be interested in, so you won't be wasting your time. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say not interested in poetry. You know, some will say they're not interested in religious information, you know, but 9 times out of 10, if it's poetry, they're going to say that, you know, they're not going to be an agent that's going to want to submit that to a publishing house, because it is a hard sell, because people normally don't come up to you and say, hey, did you read that book of poetry by so-and-so? It was great, you know, but if there's some kind of blood and guts and this kind of thing, if it's a novel with a story, people tend to want to gravitate to that easier. Poetry is something that it's emotional and people love it, but they just don't take to just buying it per se like that. It just doesn't, it has never gone over well like that, but people love it. People like to read it. People like to hear it. As far as people sitting down and saying, let's everybody go out now and buy some poetry, books of poetry, it usually doesn't happen that way. But if somebody says, hey, there's 50 Shades of Grey, it's in publication, people are going out to get it. It's a different kind of feeling. It raises different emotions. Okay? But never fear, there is a book, and this is the one I have from the library right now, but there is a 2018 version of Poets Market. Okay, and in here you can look and find out who would be traditional companies or what's going on with traditional companies. Where can I send my work? You can look through this book and find out what magazines are publishing poetry, what journals or whatever. So this would be what you would want to look for if you're going to go the traditional publishing route. This can be a good reference. I'm not going to say this is the one true and only thing that you can use, but this can help you. Okay? What's that? Who's it by? Brewer. Robert Lee Brewer is the editor of it. Okay. And well, that's what the next thing I was going to talk about is the cons about it. The cons with traditional publishing is it may be difficult to find a literary agent to market your poetry to a publishing company. And I think most people know what agents do. Agents are the people who they work as a go-between, and they pitch your work to a publishing company. Okay, and it's very hard for you to get an agent to do that because, number one, large companies usually they don't accept a whole lot of poetry, as I said in the beginning when I talked about traditional publishing. So, and then whatever you make, you're going to be paying these people 15% or whatever. So they usually want to go with, what most of the larger companies are going to be looking for. And if they're saying they're going to exclude poetry, then not to even, consider that agent or that company. Okay? All right. Now, these are just some things that I wanted to just share with you. The best way to become a published poet through the traditional poetry option is to subscribe to poetry journals, go to poetry readings, host or attend other poetry events, publish your poetry through social media such as YouTube, etc. Because this way, what you want to do is you got to get your name out there. You got to get your work out there. If you want to go traditional, it's just like being the owner of a company. Most of the time, you start off as the little buzz boy or the person doing the meager laboring work and build your way up. And that's pretty much how it's going to work with traditional publishing. Okay, you're going to start at the bottom and get people to know you, and as your fan base grows, then there are the options for possible traditional publishing. Okay? Now, last but not least, these are the important things you want to remember, even if you're not publishing poetry, if you're just writing, okay? But for the sake of our talk today, it's about poetry, writing and publishing poetry. So what do you want to achieve from publishing your poetry? Okay? Here are some of the things to consider when choosing the right option for publishing for you. Number one, do you want to share your work with friends and family as a hobby? That may be what you want to do. So, you need to choose whichever option is going to work for you. Maybe none of those options are going to work for you. Maybe you don't want to get it published. You just want to share it with others. You could just use that web to do that if that's what you want to do. Just have it go through the internet. Okay? Do you want to self-publish with the mindset to transition to traditional? You may want to start off with just using a publishing company like I did, Ex Libris, or another one, Author House, or Exelon, or somebody like this, and then work your way up to traditional. That may be your option. That may be your thought. You may think, I just want to see my work in book format, and that's fine too. You may say, I've been writing for so long or whatever, I actually want to see how my work would look in book format. I just want to get it in book format. That's one of the things I want to leave as a legacy, All right. Now, last but not least is the I guess maybe the biggie here. I want to become a famous poet. That may be somebody's dream here. That may be somebody's thought of why they're writing poetry. And that can happen. So that's one of the things, or some of the things you have to think about, when you're writing your poetry and when you want to publish your poetry. Okay? The most important thing I think you have to think about doing any writing is this last section. What are you willing to invest? Here are the biggies. You need to assess what you can commit to writing and publishing your poetry. And here's some examples that I've listed here. Okay? This is a possible checklist. Number one is your time. How much are you willing to invest per day, per week? Okay? How much are you passionate about it? I think the time and the passion goes together. It's kind of like anything you do in life. There's 24 hours in the day, and I think we tell people all the time, oh, I just didn't have enough time. Oh, I just didn't do that. But if you think about it, people stop and make the time for the things that are most important or pressing and passionate, that they're passionate about. So if this is what you're passionate about, what you want to do, then you're going to make some time for it, even if it's just 10 minutes every day, when right after you do your devotional, your prayer time or whatever. If that's it, that's your little 10 minutes you claim every day to do your writing or whatever. Okay, the biggie, money, is something that's on your checklist. How much are you willing to spend? Okay, that's a biggie. Right now, you know, you may just be starting out right after you've just had you've retired or whatever. You know, you may not want to invest a whole lot. You know, it depends on where do you want to go with your poetry. You know, what do you want to do with it? What's its intention? And that can determine how much you want to spend on it. Okay? Your opportunities that you get may depend on how much you're willing to spend on it too. Last but not least is your effort, the ability to undertake the stages of writing and publishing poetry. That's your publicity, your advertising, the sales, etc. Okay? How much are you willing to work this? Because it truly is a business. If you are going to work it and make it to a point where it's profitable and you're going to be selling your work, it's going to become your business. So it depends on what you want to do. Do you want to do that? Do you want it to be profitable? You want to publish so that it can be for sale? Or do you want to just publish so that it can just be here for your leisure or something that you want to do? These are things you have to think about, okay? All of these things are options and thoughts for you. And since we don't have many people that come and talk about poetry, I just wanted to share this with you today about how I write poetry, how I've organized poetry, and I wanted to talk about the options I think and I know that are out there for you to publish poetry. I hope that you've learned something today. I hope there's something that you can take maybe to someone who's interested in writing some poetry. Okay? So there's so many things to consider, and it's totally up to you. So why don't you get started today? Happy writing and publishing. I thank you guys for listening. You've been very attentive, and at this time, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, wait, hold your questions till I make it to you with my little mic, but I forgot to do two things, which I want to get started. The sign-in sheet. And if this is your first time here, I'd like to give you a little information about us. As a few faces I don't recognize. Here. Here. And here we go. Okay. I want to thank Ingrid. That was a very well. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me get one more. I want to thank Ingrid. That was an excellent presentation on poetry. Let me pull this out now. If we have any questions, let me get them on mic because this is being audio recorded. We do have people that follow us from out of the state and different areas, so we're really a bigger group than what you see right here. So if you have a question, let me get it on the mic, and then Ingrid will answer it for you.
When we're doing the, I guess it's going to be bi-monthly meetings with the poet group, are you going to go through how you construct a poem, or mainly critiquing people's work? Are you going to teach people how, like the meter, rhythm, and all of that, or is it mainly going to be a critiquing session?
It's mainly going to be a critiquing session, the same way the fiction is.
Any other questions?
One thing I did is my first two books were a traditional publisher through Pelican, but after that I sort of formed my own publishing company.
Okay.
And what I
Great.
did was I was able to develop a format or a template. I went to CreateSpace, which I didn't want to pay their cost to create these things, but I used some of the guidelines. I liked a different type of template, so I created my own.
Okay.
Have my own typeface that I like to use, the whole process. So basically I do that whole process right now, have someone who's a friend who's a professional editor look at it free.
Oh, that's a plus.
Who's willing to do this to help people,
You're
by the
blessed
way.
with that, yeah.
And I had a friend, a psychologist, who looked at some things too. Then I have a proofreader group. The only thing I really subbed out was the cover. And the young lady I found was really, really good. However, she became so famous now she's too costly, so I can't use her for my next book. But anyway, basically my cost in every book was about maybe $400 to $500 just for the cover. The ISBN number was always done by CreateSpace, and all I did with CreateSpace was download my PDF of the book, download my PDF of the cover, and then I got it for $2.35 plus shipping. They have a nice page on Amazon for me, the whole 9 yards. So I have like 5 or 6 books on there right now. But I found that I'm making these checks for $6 and $9 coming in from from all over the world
Mhm.
and just deposit in my book.
Mhm.
But I do have, for anybody who's interested, even yourself, I can produce some of these services for you. Or another thing I want to throw out is a lot of poets here probably who may have 5, 10, or 20 poetry. But what I'm saying is, if y'all want to come together as a group, you can actually publish one book fairly inexpensive.
Oh,
Because I have the template, and we probably, just for a basic cover with everybody's name on it. And this is a trick that a lot of the speakers do now, because a lot of them are not writers. I'm part of the National Speakers Association, and what they do is they put together maybe 2 articles that they love, and we come together and publish in one book and self-publish it through this form of publishing company. But anyway, I'd be happy to do that with you.
Okay.
So, and I think you're a St. Charles Parish person?
Mhm.
Okay, so
I
am
am.
I. So
Okay. All
very
right.
good.
Thanks for sharing that
Okay.
with us. Thank you.
And we're going to have Jerry speak for us next year, so he's full of all kind of good information.
Good.
Any other questions about the presentation, poetry? I think you hit everything so well that we're good? Okay, well that's great. Okay.
I'd like to ask Jerry a question.
Okay, go right ahead. That's all right. just
Okay,
keep
will you be in the poetry group with us next?
I actually sneak my poetry in my books. So they're self-help books that have some poetry in them.
Okay.
And I'm trying to make it specific for an educational process in there. But I do have I'm mostly a songwriter.
Oh, okay.
But,
Okay.
I'm going to go back and forth with those groups.
Okay, and yeah, you can go, you don't have to pick a group. I mean, if you want to stay in the poetry group, that's fine. If you want to stay in the fiction, nonfiction, that's fine. Or you can just whatever you want to work on that month, because it's all under Southern Christian Writers. Right.
So, Ingrid, how much time do you devote to poetry on a daily basis?
On a daily basis?
On a daily basis, yeah.
I guess a half an hour.
Half an hour?
I guess a half an
And-
hour.
Well, what is the... I forgot what I was going to ask.
Okay, well, we can come back.
Yeah, maybe
Okay,
so.
well, if you remember, let me know. We'll come back to you. Anybody else? Carol?
I'd like to know if Jerry has a card.
Oh, Jerry. Jerry, do you have a card?
I did. Actually, I need to put one.
Yeah, we'll put one up here. Yeah. If you
Oh,
have
boy,
some,
I
pass
hope you got
those
lots
out.
of, just
Yeah.
pass them around.
Pass them out, Jerry. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anybody have any more questions?
Do you remember your question?
No, I'm trying to get a card.
I think
back
Linda
here.
has a question.
In your book that you were holding up as an example, you were talking about using the voices of people of the past, and so obviously you have to write that in first person, right?
Right.
And I know I have a tendency to sort of gravitate toward first person, which is probably not right for what I'm writing, but I'm always drawn to that. So do you find that writing in first person lends yourself to poetry more because you're inside their head? And how do you get prepared to get inside somebody else's head like that?
I think it does. It does for me. I write a lot in first person because I think the type of poetry I write, my poetry is pretty much like a novel. Most of my poetry is. And so I actually become these people or the characters, and I'm in there for the moment that I'm writing it. Someone can call me or whatever, and it's like, okay, I need to just step out of what I'm writing. I really get drawn into what I'm writing, into that character, to feel it. And I've gotten feedback from people when they read, especially this type of poetry. There are people that are older than I am who have done that type of work, like, the older black woman that has been the person that's, cleaned the floors, and, they've known people that have worked on plantations or whatever. They've seen this, or they've heard stories or whatever, and it brings them to that place. And they've told me that they feel like I am an old soul, like someone has been buried inside of my thought processes, according to the way I write it.
Okay, my second question that I forgot before. Over the course of a year, how many poems would you say that you have created?
Gosh, over the course of a year. I can tell you that I wrote one book, book 6. I wrote it and it was published within 2 months. I wrote it and published it within 2 months.
Is that this one? Book 6?
That's the from whence we, that one.
This one?
Yeah.
Book 6.
But during that time, didn't you have other
Mm-hmm.
poems that you didn't put in the book?
Right. This is what's published. I have a lot of work that is not published. I can really write something every day, And why I told you it's a half an hour is because I have to turn off like my thoughts. I'll be in the shower and a poem will be coming. And it's like, okay.
Don't you wake up with a poem sometimes?
I wake up in the morning with a
Yeah,
poem, and
yeah.
I'm doing my devotion, and then that's usually when that's my little half an hour right there. There's always something. And I also teach classes. I teach a writing class in St. Charles Parish with the community education. And a lot of people tell me at that time who take that class, I want to write, but I don't know what to write. And the first thing I tell them is that there's always something to write about. You wake up, there's the sun, you walk and you go to your refrigerator. There's always something that you can write about. As long as you are alive and you're thinking and there's a thought process, there's always something you can write about.
I was wondering for the book As I Ponder, did you mentioned that you worked at the plantation in Destrehan for 9 months. Did you have the idea before you went there and you went there for research, or did you have the idea while you were volunteering there?
That's a very good question, because this is what has happened. And this is how this poetry that I've done has evolved, because my very first book is Of Spirit and Truth. And the woman who, I'm going to call her the education director for lack of the appropriate term, she's the lady that used to do the tours. Like school groups would come to the Destrehan Plantation and they would have a Heritage Festival Day. And that would be a day where they would commence and show school kids, this is what would happen back in the day, in the life of this plantation when it was bustling and, we're in the South in the 1700s, 1800s when this actually happened. They had the cannons go off, the whole thing. They had the ladies, stirring the pot, making the indigo, because that's what they grew there. They did all of that. Then they had, a slave cabin, and they talked about the life of a slave and that. Well, this lady bought my first book. She liked my poetry, and she said, I wonder if there's something that we could really do to help promote your poetry and your work here. And the timing, it's just God's timing, because it was 2010. And so the next year was going to be the bicentennial of the slave revolt of 1811. And they were going to be doing activities the whole year. Well, one Friday morning, I had the thought, like I'm telling you, did my devotion and I didn't want to wake up. I wanted to keep sleeping because it had been a long night. And the Lord kept telling me, wake up. And I was like, no, Lord, I want to sleep today. It's Friday. But, how do you tell the Lord you want to sleep and he's telling you wake up? So obedience is better than sacrifice. So I get up and it's like, okay, what are you getting me up for? And he says, I need you to write a poem. And he's very specific about what I'm going to write about. I need you to write it in slave dialect. I need you to dedicate it to the trees at the Destrehan Plantation. And I was like, Lord, I don't think you got the memo. We are no longer at the plantation. We are, this is not cool. We're not doing this anymore. We don't even like to go to plantations. But then, when it's something from him, you need to obey and you need to write it. And I'm not writing this stuff anyways. It's there. It's just flowing. And so I'm just writing. And I want to add to it. It's like, no, I can't add to it. It's like, this stuff doesn't even sound like this other stuff, because that's not what he wants me to say. So I finally put that on the side and I go to sleep. The following Tuesday, the next Tuesday, I get a call from this woman, the educational director lady. And that's when she says, we're having this big celebration. It's all year. And I really want to help promote your books or something. Do you think there's something that you could write or something you could say? And I started laughing. And she said, what's so funny? And I said, I know why the Lord woke me up on last Friday and had me to write a poem about trees at your plantation, because I would have never have done that. I mean, who would have thought in a million years? Why that plantation? Why about those trees? Why? Because he knew that this was coming. And there are other circumstances why some of these other books came along too. But that's how I got to do the research. And they liked it, and I ended up doing a little 9 months stitch there, where they made a costume for me. I have a costume, just like the one that was on the slave mannequin there. Oh, wow. And I do a monologue for one of the poems that's in this book. Yeah. Yep.
We have a question here.
Hi.
Hi.
I have so many projects that I'm working on, and I'm trying to find out like what is the best route to take because I too am a songwriter and poetry, and it's like I'm trying to do some Christian children books because I'm also an educator, and I'm trying to do some for the secular. So I'm trying to balance this all out. Like, should I complete one project at a time and then move on, or what I do is I spend like 10 minutes on each and I'm still feeling overwhelmed like I'm not completing any.
Well,
So should I like just focus on one and complete that one and then move to the next?
It's just my personal opinion. I think I would try to just focus on one and get one complete, because I feel like I'd just be, a part of me be here, a little part is here, and I would feel overwhelmed, and I probably wouldn't complete any of them that way. You know, and closure is a big thing for me. You know, I need to have closure on something. It's like I have my own deadlines set up as to, you know, when I'm going to work on something or how long it's taking me to do something. And it would bother me to have 5 things open and I haven't completed any of them. That's just my personal opinion. You know, some people work well and they feel like they can do. I have a daughter who's a teacher. I call her my multitask daughter. You know, I can't have 5 things going, and I need to feel like I've completed one thing and it's, you know, done, and I have closure on it, and then I can put all my efforts into working on the next thing. It's kind of like, you know, 5 to do, 1 down, 4 to go. You know.
Did you have another question?
I'll come back in just a second.
You know, you have your book for sale at Destrehan Plantation. Have you considered putting it up at the Whitney Plantation?
You know, that's a good question, because it seems like that's traveling with me. This is the 3rd time somebody has asked me about that, and I have yet to get to Whitney Plantation, but I did talk to someone about it because I was at West St. John High School. Yeah, they do. I was at West St. John High School, and somebody there from Whitney bought 5 of my books, and, you know, said I should have a conversation with them, and I haven't gotten to Whitney yet. But, you know,
The Lord reminding you to go.
yes.
Well, I bought
Some
the
more
book,
confirmation.
So, you know,
Yeah,
it's stuff sells.
yeah.
And Ingrid has some books to sell today if any of you would like to buy one and read some of her poetry. We have another question over here.
Well, it wasn't so much a question as a comment to the
Okay.
young lady right here. I was in that same, I just published my first book of poetry. I did it through Create Space too.
Okay.
And I did, yeah.
Wonderful.
And it was intuitive. It was okay. But I had like several different ideas. Like you're like, where do I go first? And I think when we said that we're writing to honor God, it's submitting your will to His.
That's true.
And when that's the main thing. That's how I write. So I had like a slew of things in front of me, and I was like, do I do this? Do I do that? And He said, just go. And as I went and started writing, it led me, or doing something, it led me to what He wanted me to do. What I wanted to publish first wasn't what I published. So I think the main thing is to surrender your will to His will. That's where I start with everything. Right? It's His plans, not my plans.
Very good answer.
Well, another comment on that. I was purchasing specialist for Louisiana, and doing so, you had to, at a moment, stop doing this, do this, and I think in retirement I brought this home. And I have so many projects. And then I made 70 yesterday, and I'm thinking, before I die, can I please? I've come in tune with my mortality when I see all these things that I've not done. And one thing that I may have done wrong, in writing my book, the one that I talked to you about, I changed the title. And in changing the title, I changed the tense, because it was in the second person, then I changed the title, and then it said, well, wait a minute, I got to rewrite all the poems, because now it was to, you know, so I'm a mess.
Oh.
So you got to straighten me out.
Change the title back.
You know, one thing about that, you may feel inspired, but you still have to deal with the working part of what you're doing.
Yes, you do.
And one thing I would recommend is if you're scattered and you have too many things going on, make yourself a schedule. It don't have to be written in stone. But if Monday morning is for writing, then that's all you do Monday morning. If Tuesday evening is for research, that's all you do Tuesday evening. If Monday afternoon is for poetry, you work on poetry. And if Friday is for the novel concept you have, that's what you do on Friday. And then if you have some inspiration and you're blocked here on Friday, then switch a little. But at least you know those days you have set aside for this, this, and this. And you can always switch up. If if in the middle of your novel writing you're stuck on a I know people have written, if you're stuck on a scene, then let that percolate in the back of your brain for a while and go ahead and switch to your poetry until something comes back to you. But you can quit being scattered, or you can stay scattered the rest of your life. But one of the ways to do that is not to give up on everything, but say, okay, I'm gonna build myself a schedule, a weekly schedule, and see how that works.
Yeah, I tried the weekly schedule thing. Weekly schedule thing doesn't work so well for me, but I am a scheduled kind of the thought person. What seems to work better for me is I'm in create mode, and so from this time to this time I'm creating, or I may not sit down and write it all out, but this is the thoughts and things I have. You'll find little pieces of paper and little things because I'm in create mode, And then since I do the whole thing so far, then I might be in a mode where I have to do the PR part of it and talk to a person that does PR with me and work on stuff that we're going to do, like events and things like that. I'm doing that. Then since I am the dinosaur that writes up everything and then has to type it up, then I'm in the editing and the typing mode, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to do any create. This is just, and review and throw away and start over type thing. So that kind of works for me. The Monday through Friday thing the days didn't work.
Verna has a question. Here, I'll hold it for you. It's very sensitive.
Okay, thank you. Ingrid, this has been so good, so informative. Have you ever thought of writing a book on writing poetry and all the helps? Because this is just terrific. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. No, I hadn't thought about writing a book on how to write poetry as of yet. But people have told me that I should write books on like self-help books on other topics, So it is something that I should consider. I have a brochure up here. I'm also doing work as Green's Consulting Company, which is Green's my maiden name. So I do other avenues of the writing aspect. Like I do teaching classes. I have the creative writing classes and that. I have a class that is very popular, and I'm hoping it spreads to other areas in the community, called a journaling class for health and healing. And I like this class, and I think most people like it because it's not for people who just want to write as a hobby or for their job or whatever. It's a therapeutic type of thing. It helps people because I'm trying to get people to write, to let their feelings out, to give them another avenue. Because we're going through so many things right now, everything that's going on right now. And I think it's good to remember that writing is always an outlet or a release. It's therapeutic, and it's something that can be easily done. And I'm hoping that it can help some people before, they make other choices, or, definitely negative choices. And people take it, because they want to talk about, they want to write about the loss of a loved one, they lost a job, or their pet died, or, they lost a house, or some tragedy or something. And they're stuck in a place, and it helps them move on. So I've gotten some good feedback on the evaluation form. So that's been good. But thank you, Verna.
Okay, I think we've exhausted the questions. Let me just remind you, before we're going to close here in just a sec, let me just remind you that next month will be a critique session, and we will have the 2 sessions next month. We'll have the fiction and nonfiction here, and the poets will be in the children's section. And if that doesn't work out for you, then I've already talked to Linda. Their church is willing to let the poets meet there. We'll just see how that works out. I've already sent the material that we're going to critique in my group. I've already emailed it. If you have not received it, please let me know. I'll send that email again. If you want to attend, you don't have to submit writing to attend. If you want to get what we're critiquing and just read it so you know what we're talking about, email a request to me. I'll send it to you. And as far as the poetry, if I'm going to let Ingrid handle how y'all exchange poetry and whatever you're going to do in your group, so you can direct all your questions to her. If you're interested in joining the guild, you can direct all those questions to me, because this is an umbrella for both groups.